Hi, everyone. I'm Kyler Cheatham. I'm joined by Adam Cheatham from the Confluential. And I am very excited to be coming to you today, wherever you're joining us from. We're live on a variety of different platforms and can see all your comments and questions. Today, we're going to be talking about speed to value when it comes to technology implementations. But before we get there, just a little bit of logistics. Again, we are from the Confluential, which is an implementation organization or technology strategy agency that focuses in how do you get the value from the technology that best meets your needs. And then more importantly, how do you implement and integrate that within your current technology environment? So with that, we go live every Thursday. You can find us on all social channels at The Confluential. And I am joined by our CEO today, Adam Cheatham. So welcome, Adam, to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can see your comments. The point of this conversation is to open that dialogue around what does speed to value mean to your organization? Because it doesn't matter what it means to us, what it means to your neighbor. It matters what it means to you. So joining that conversation gives us that opportunity to have a bunch of diverse dialogues. Now in our current landscape, and I'll let Adam kind of speak to this in just a second, we've kind of gone from a quote unquote templated approach with enterprise technology to more of it's as unique as a DNA to the organization. And so we need to take strategies that are not cookie cutter or that are not kind of just given to you by your vendor or SI. You need to be very much involved in owning and creating your own strategy. So, with that, Adam, why is speed to value important? And maybe just give us a quick definition of what that means. Oh, and
Yeah.
introduce yourself.
Oh, well, so my name is Adam Schamer. I'm CEO of the Confluential, and I have a background in helping organizations add value through technology, right? So, at the end of the day, I think that the most important thing to recognize here is organizations want to always be able to make better decisions more quickly. And that, if you kind of combine that in concept, that's a speed to value, right? The value comes from the better decisions, speed comes from making them more quickly. But that doesn't have to mean reckless either. Fast can be bad.
Hmm.
And slow can be bad as well if it takes too long. So there are a number of tools that we want to be able to leverage and use to be able to achieve this idea of making better decisions more quickly and doing that in a way that fits with the organizational goals of your business, right? For me, what speed to value means is how do I create a a well articulated strategy that says I
Hmm.
want to accomplish these things and then be able to do those quickly and effectively. That
Hmm.
way, you can start leveraging those technologies that allow you to do those things more quickly in a way that allows them to compound. A great example of the opposite of speed to value can be the traditional ERP implementations
Hmm.
that go big bang in
Hmm.
2-3 years, right? Nobody wants to wait 3 years to find out whether or not their ERP is going to work, right?
Right.
So how do you achieve speed to value in that? The first part of it is doing things like implementation readiness planning, and the types of things that are oriented towards preparing your organization to take on this implementation task. The other part is starting to think about it in more phases and iterative types of approaches. This fits both waterfall and
Yeah.
agile methodologies, so we'll talk about those a bit here as we go. But the idea is really that if I can get things out the door in pieces that are functional and valuable, those pieces can come together more quickly and the
Hmm.
value that they're providing can compound over time. So that's what it means to me. I'm curious what from our influencer at the Confluential, what you're finding the other folks are thinking about
Yeah.
speed to value and what it means to them.
Yeah, and I think that's a great overview, and I 100% agree with you. I think the thing that I would add is kind of backing up and defining value. That sounds like a very simple step, but a lot of times we miss that or we let vendors or other third party influencers in our strategy define that for us. And as business leaders or technology leaders in the business, we need to know, what does value mean to us? Is it a certain KPI? Is it a return on investment? Is it an efficiency in our processes? What does that exactly mean to us as an organization? It's just like, a lot of times we like to throw around this failure, that failure. And failure always means something different to each organization as well. So, kind of building on that idea of value, a lot of times when we go into a client, we kind of treat it as a proof of concept, business unit by business unit, when we look at speed to value. I think that piece of it is important to kind of understand, because I'm curious of what you're seeing, but I'm seeing a lot of people in the industry, specifically CFOs, be like, yeah, I'm not going to give you $20 million for a technology implementation for the next 5 years. That's wild. I'm not doing that. It's not happening. What I will give you, right, is 200,000 to prove you can do it in sales, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to give you this massive amount of budget. Is that kind of a trend that you're seeing within the
Yeah.
executive leadership side too?
When there are a number of different ways of pulling that apart. And the first is being able to look at this from a proof of concept perspective, you mentioned.
Hmm.
Um, I like this approach particularly, and have been using it quite effectively with clients in the more modern technology space, IoT, AI types of things, where that these things have never been done. Like the types of
Yeah.
things that people are talking about doing, or they've been done one time, and you're relying on that one time to be valuable to you, and it may not be. So the proof of concept approach for me, especially in those types of spaces, is really valuable because you can add value quickly
Hmm.
while also doing it in small iterative bites. In this space, from an AI perspective, failing quickly is also speed to value, right? From a perspective of, I better not spend a year to figure out that it's not going to work. I want to
Hmm.
spend 6 weeks, and I want to figure out from a proof of concept perspective, are we on target before I invest more money in
Yeah.
really going over the top of it? And what type of oversight you need to be able to accomplish that. One of the things that's in that scenario that's really been interesting to me on the whole is um, you see Jurassic Park, right? And they're like, we got to turn out, we got like, we have this scenario where the park
Hmm.
is falling apart, and so we had to turn off all of the power.
Hmm.
This is a dramatic thing, but in an implementation, is actually that's what you're doing. You're shutting
Yeah.
everything down on the old one, and then you're
Yeah.
lighting it back up, right? Nobody went to think to see if the raptors escaped, and now all of a sudden you can't ship products because you got to go and do something weird and dangerous and risky to your business. You got a bigger problem than you started with. So
Yeah.
um, I really, that's been bouncing around in my head as kind of an analogy for this from a fail fast perspective, because that's a big failure and a big dramatic step. What if
Hmm.
we flip the switches one at a time, right?
Right.
Let's just turn this one off, and then this one, and then this one. Not the whole thing all at once. Um, wouldn't that be safer? Couldn't we figure out where our holes are in smaller bits and pieces? And for me, that's the proof of concept side of things. How do I create a plan and a strategy,
Hmm.
um, and then start taking small bites of it? And then that way, when we're tinkering with new technologies, they can be more iterative in nature. If we miss a step, we don't fall flat on our face. We get up quick and we adjust. So that's my thought process on it. From somebody who uses a lot of AI in her job these
Hmm.
days, I'm curious what you have found successful in figuring out what tools work well for you,
Yeah.
and how it is your approach to that has been effective.
Sure, absolutely. Well, when we talk about AI, again, I know sound like a broken record, but it's so important that you define what that means for your organization. An enterprise level AI system is not something that's going to be successful today. An AI system within each niche area of your business is certainly a great concept to be able to do that proof of concept testing, especially when AI outputs, you're not really sure 100% of what you're looking for. It all needs to be tweaked and tested, and you need to have those kind of scenarios or that stress test to see what that actually can handle when it comes to systems. And I think the perfect example of this is the immersion of Industry 4.0 versus Industry 5.0. And Industry 4.0 is all around automation, hyper automation, autonomous systems, really using that machinery and those tools to make strategic business decisions. And then we see the evolution of Industry 5.0 to say, actually, you know what? We need this collaboration between human and machine in order to have this balance between that. So when we talk about AI, it's almost like a tool. I even see it as a bit of a toy, right? For your innovative employees to look at, to play around with, to test. But there needs to be oversight when it comes to those. So when
Yeah.
we're talking about a speed to value AI implementation, you need to look at a lot of different things. First and foremost, speed to value is going to be part of the sales pitch for these AI vendors. We even see it in the core ERP world. Faster is better because you're going to realize that revenue faster. And that is not always the case, but it certainly is. So a lot of the messages I've seen in the industry lately is we can get you into an ECC to SAP S4 HANA environment in 5 days. We can migrate all of that data over in 5 days. That's awesome. That's super cool, right? Can they functionally do it in 5 days? Yeah, they functionally can. If you have the perfect, pristine environment for them to be able to migrate it over. And we know, especially in the SAP world, that client rarely exists, right? Because we've got
Yeah.
lots of complexities. We've likely got, just from an industry average, when we look at an SAP environment, over 300 integrations, right? We got a mess really when it comes to an SAP
Yeah.
implementation environment. So that's on kind of a macro scale, right? Even if we scale that back, there are faster ways to do implementation, and vendors will try and sell you that. But it's your job as the project owner and the project um, administrator, the PM, whatever, right, to ensure that you're checking and balancing those. So
Yeah.
fundamentally, when it comes to I would focus on a data strategy, not so much an AI strategy. The AI strategy will come as, an initiative within that, but until your data is really there, or you at least know where your data is, then you don't know really what you need as
Yeah.
far as, it's like going to a restaurant and not being able to see the menu. Well, I know I can eat here, but what do you have? What do what is available to me?
Yeah.
And so that's the piece that I really see businesses tripping on, is moving so fast that they don't realize the fundamentals that it takes. And a lot of times that can be done utilizing AI or process mining or process intelligence too. There's efficiencies within that, but it's not a silver bullet. Your team still needs to put in the
Yeah.
work, get those foundational aspects to integrate a new technology.
Well, I think that's a great way of pulling in Mick's question, which is what strategies have you seen work best for accelerating time to value, time to impact without sacrificing scalability and long-term flexibility? You had to a certain extent, the work is the work, right?
Mhm.
AI can help you do that work more quickly sometimes, but the work is the work, and you had to put in the time on it. When we say speed to value, it's not about let's cram this sucker in and get it up and running as quick and as fast as we can, because that's when you break things, right?
Yeah.
Um, the idea of speed to value is being able to take measured steps
Mhm.
in a sequence that fits and has a good solid pace that works for you,
Mhm.
right? Determining your own pace is important. That how fast can you run without burning out,
Mhm.
right? Technology strategies, whether it's an AI, a small AI application, a full-blown ERP, some type of an agile implementation of
Mhm.
minimum viable products, your technology you should consider as a long-term race. It's a marathon, and it's actually
Mhm.
probably more like an Ironman race. It's got different types of stages along the way. If you go sprinting hard at the very beginning, you're going to be gassed by a quarter way through it, and you're not going to make it. You're just not going to finish, and you're going to crash and burn in the middle of it. The same is true with any types of these technology things. The best strategy for accelerating and finishing at the same time is to plan appropriately, prepare appropriately, and then set a good pace and stay on target.
Mhm.
That's how you really do this. And for me,
Mhm.
that strategy, I've heard it referred to a number of different things: implementation planning, phase zero. I really like the term envisioning,
Mhm.
because it's a bit more oriented towards the nature of what you're trying to do. Where are we going? What are we trying to do strategically? And how do we set a plan in place for that? And then what do we do to prepare for the starting gates, right?
Yeah.
Prepping first
Absolutely.
is important. And you should do all of this before you're signed and committed to a contract with anybody. And that's really the strategy that makes the
Mhm.
biggest difference. That way, when it's game day, you've done all your prep, you've done all your practice, and you're ready to rock. You're educated, you know
Mhm.
what to expect as much as you can, and then you crank through it. You eliminate problems like having to know the difference between what's going wrong and what's just hard because you've done your
Mhm.
homework. You know what to expect. You know it's going to be hard, and then that way it's easier to tell what's wrong. And that's
Yeah.
what I think is really the best strategy there. And then being able to plan that in a way that sequences how are we going to break this up into pieces, and how are we going to implement one piece at a time in a way that allows us to achieve value along the way, in iterative deployments, so that we're using the tool and we're continuing to build it after we go live in several iterations. That for me is what makes the most difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for the question, Mick. This is a really good one. And I think it's different for each organization. That's why it's so critical to kind of have someone in your corner that's talking
Yeah,
you through this. It used to be historically that we would have, an ERP implementation every 30 years. It would be like almost like a new workforce level that is in charge of an ERP implementation. But now we have technology as truly the backbone of the organization, and not just one. We have many different technologies that support our ecosystem. So it's really critical to understand what that means for identifying what you want that impact to be, right? Is it return on investment? Is it efficiencies? Is it new revenue? Is it more customers? What is it, right? And
yeah,
then when it comes to scalability, who's tracking that? Who's making sure that we're capturing all of these great strategies and actually scaling them to other areas of the organization? Because each business unit is its own little subculture that you're going to have to go in and be like, okay, yes, this blueprint worked great with operations, but when I move over to, a sub operation category or business unit like accounting, am I going to be able to do the same exact thing here? The answer is usually no, right? There's different needs for that area, but you do have a strong foundation and a proof of concept to understand how much are we spending, how much results are we expecting, and when, so that we can really get that budget and make sure that we're setting expectations with our executive team. So knowing that, just a quick logistic reminder as we're halfway through our conversation, you can pop your questions in wherever you're joining from today. If you're watching this after the fact of the live, just go ahead and pop your questions in the comments, tag Adam, the Confluential, myself. We'll go back in and answer them. We do that every single week, so we don't leave any comment untouched. So I encourage you to kind of join that
yeah.
conversation. So let's move kind of to talk a little bit about, I don't want to get into like a crazy argument conversation about agile versus waterfall, but just historically, right? When we look at implementation approaches and we look at speed to value, Agile is the one that kind of comes to mind in that conversation of around that's the implementation area in which we can utilize kind of this proof of concept approach. What if you don't have an agile ERP department or IT department that's not
Yeah.
used to that type of setup or language, and you still want to look for this in your best of breed solution or in your AI solution, even your ERP solution? How is that
Yeah.
possible?
Well, you've got two options, right? So if you're a waterfall shop, you can still achieve this speed to value terminology using a waterfall approach, especially with ERP. Agile in ERP takes a particular skilled hand and a willingness to let go of some things that waterfall forces you to depend on, in order to achieve those benefits. Like the idea that our requirements are supposed to be flexible, right? We're supposed to be able to negotiate them from a user story perspective in Agile, whereas in Waterfall, the requirement is the requirement. And there are benefits and drawbacks to either side of that. So I would say that first and foremost, if you're looking to achieve speed to value in a waterfall environment, that can still be done. It just needs to be done differently than a 24-month big bang deployment, right? You need to properly plan for it up front. Try to do this in a sequence at a pace that fits your organization, and then think about what your phases are, right? If you're dedicated to waterfall, that's fine. But if you're really looking to make a transition into agile, you don't have that. You're looking for this to happen, and you want your ERP program to be the first one, your first agile project. You really should seek some help with that, and decomposing your existing organization. And it's not just your agile. It's not just your IT department that needs to be
Mhm.
agile. It's your business too, right?
Good point. Good point. Yeah.
Most of the agile problems I see aren't IT. They're the business doesn't know what they're trying to cram into this agile methodology, and IT does a bad job of explaining what they mean by it. So the business says, "Well, it sounds like you just want to do a bunch of random stuff and say, here is this box of knickknacks that adds value, and I have no control over that." That's not the case at all. Agile has to have its own rigor the same way
Yeah.
Waterfall does as well. And the business needs to be bought into that too. It's not just an IT. Just like your ERP project isn't just an IT project, it's a
Yeah.
business project. So that's the first thing that you got to make sure that you're on target with, is knowing that it's not just your IT department that wants to do this agile thing. You're going to drag your business into it too, and your stakeholders on that side, they've got to be ready for it. And a lot
Mhm.
of times, they're not. And IT says we're going to be agile, and the business has no idea what that means, and so you have a clashing of conflicts. So the first thing you do is understand that agile is a transformation for your organization,
Mhm.
business and IT. And that's really a key component of the deployment, especially when you start thinking about going live with an ERP on an
Mhm.
agile platform, with an agile
Mhm.
methodology. And seek some help, right? The first time
Yeah.
you do anything, it's important to try to figure out how you seek help, and what it is you can do with your organization. Um, when you're doing something for the first time, being partnered with somebody who's done it many times will
Mhm.
help you understand the difference between what's wrong and what's just hard.
Mhm.
And um, one of the fastest ways to blow your speed to value approach is to compensate for things that are just hard
Mhm.
by thinking they're wrong and we need to change our approach, as opposed to just powering through it, or mistaking things that are wrong for things that are hard and saying we just need to power through this, it will get better, and not knowing that it won't. This is wrong. It's not hard, it's wrong. So when you're trying to change the language that you speak as an organization and deploy major technology at the same time, it's knowing the difference and being able to have an outside set of eyes that can see it differently is important. I also think that if you are looking to transition to an agile environment, and agile methodology, AI is the perfect opportunity to
Mhm.
try that,
Mhm.
right? Um, One of my favorite strategies is to say, I have an AI strategy. I know I need to be able to add value quickly, and I need to be able to allow this AI
Mhm.
tool to learn. So I want to get it up and running on something small. And then I want to give it time to collect data. I want to give it time to learn. And then I want to
Mhm.
build on it from a continuous improvement perspective. That's
Mhm.
like a perfect fit for an agile project. And what you can do with that is you can take that agile project and make it your incubator for
Mhm.
that transformation to agile, while also adding value with a new
Mhm.
tool that's probably one of your strategies this year, which is taking on AI from a
Mhm.
perspective of integrating technology with your business.
Yeah, for sure. And that, is a great segue into some of these questions that we're getting here in the comments. So I well, these are great questions, you guys. So let's first start with the role of consultants. So we used to, and even in this is great for businesses and consultants, right? Because you still have to make yourself valuable and not, rely on these 3-year contracts. You need to
Yeah.
figure out how to create value and sell yourself all the time. So we have that from the consultant's point of view. And then also, what should the business be expecting? And I'll take it and then kind of pass it to Adam. So, for our consultants out there, really gone are the days of where you're getting these 3-year, 5-year contracts. You need to figure out how to be able to show value, to bring value to your relationship on a weekly basis when you're talking with your clients. That doesn't always have to be key metrics or return on projects, but you need to be there as their advisor, as someone that understands the integration between technology and business. Adam has said it beautifully. IT is not known for its communication and explaining skills, right? That doesn't mean they're not brilliant, but nobody was ever like, wow, that IT department really knows how to, speak and communicate. That's just not a skill set a lot of times we find. So you
It's not their
bridging the
job,
gap.
right? Their job isn't to know your
Exactly.
job, it's to know their
Yeah.
job.
Right. So, our consultants out there, you need to fill that role and understand that. I think diversifying yourself with other tools, getting trained in things like process intelligence, getting those data certs, especially if you're a younger consultant and you're kind of just in the field, figuring out how you can add more value to the client. From the client's perspective, the phased role of the consultant needs to be very clear and understanding expectations between each other. You should also feel as though this person is a coach to you, not a dictator, right? So this type of approach is a partnership. A lot of times that's what we don't see in our vendor relationships is this is our system, this is what it does, this is how we implement it, this is what we're doing. As opposed to that consultant that's showing up, keeping everything together, understanding what your business outcomes are, right? That impact, we've established that in our planning, pre implementation planning, visioning, whatever you want to call it. And now that consultant is tasked with helping you achieve that. And that's really what we're looking at. And I think this is a healthy relationship because it even gives you an opportunity to kind of try out, right? A transformation consultant to make sure it's a good fit for the organization. So and that's just my 2 cents. Adam has, way more
Yeah.
experience than I do in this. So definitely want to hear your thoughts.
Well, I think the role of a consultant in a phased approach is to work yourself out of a job. That's the role, right? What we always consider for our clients is, yes, we want to have long-term partnerships with our clients so that we can add value as long as they need that. And as their needs adjust, we will adjust to those needs, right? I can work on an ERP project today. I can transition into an AI project tomorrow. and we can show our ability to add value and work ourselves out of a job as we hand the keys over, right?
Mhm.
The idea is to create a phased approach where you get things started and you get things moving. And then as you start to hand over more responsibility to the client starts to understand this software more. The client starts to own it more. The IT team is getting better at developing new value within this system. That's when the consultant in this phased approach starts to take the training wheels off, right? There's a moment where you have to, as a consultant, say, you don't need me anymore,
Mhm.
right? That's the goal. That's the
Mhm.
role of the consultant in a phased approach, is to be not needed anymore, so the client can be self-sufficient. Now, there are a lot of organizations out there that are designed to do the exact opposite. They're
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
designed to ingrain themselves and be there forever. Why do you think the Accentures of the world have
Mhm.
IP in SAP? So that you can't write your own code in it,
Mhm.
so that you cannot use that software by
Mhm.
yourself. You now
Mhm.
need Accenture, or you now need Deloitte to run that system for you forever.
Mhm.
As long as you have it, they will run it
Mhm.
for you because they wrote that code and they own
Mhm.
it. And you didn't do a good job of learning it along the way. So now you're stuck with them forever.
Mhm.
And that's a
Yeah.
problem that I think in the industry is antithetical to what I believe the role of a consultant should be in a phased
Yeah.
approach, which is to work yourself out of a job.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean that as a consultant and as a client, you can't say this consultant's very good at teaching me new things and has a
Mhm.
very well-rounded skill set. So now I can trust them and take them on for different things.
Yeah.
You know, that's how you create a long-term relationship with
Mhm.
the client, is you prove that you can work yourself out of a job, and then if you do a very good job of that, the clients come back and say, now we want more from you because you're so good at what you do.
Mhm.
Having them be so dependent on you that they must have you, I think, is not fair. So that's my
Yeah.
personal opinion.
Yeah, and we it lacks a lot of integrity, and we could do a whole live on, the ethics of our industry. We could probably do, a whole day live around that and the issues that come out there. But it reminds me of a conversation that Adam and I were recently in, with a Fortune 50 company, and we were kind of like, "Why are you calling us?" And they were like, "Because I can't trust what my, closest advisors say to me. I don't know if they're telling me the truth. I don't know what's going on because I know they're
Yeah,
here, with an agenda." And that's not a bad thing, right? You might need, that size of an organization to support you, but you are responsible for that custom code, those custom integrations, and that vendor lock in. You have to oversee that and kind of police your own project to make sure that
yeah,
you can be self-sufficient without your consultants. For the consultants out there, that might be kind of scary to say work yourself out of a job, but that's how you create trust in that relationship. 9 times out of 10, our clients will call us back in a couple of years, say, "Hey, I have, this global manufacturing project where I'm trying to get all of my different, you know, um, machines or shops on the same page. Can you help me with that?" Because they trust you now to come into the
yeah,
organization, do what you need to do, and then get out of there, so that you can continue to have that lasting impact. And that is speed to value right there. When it's done the right way, is helping these
yeah,
clients achieve what they need to achieve as a business in a very fast tracked but quality methodology. And that's the thing that a lot of times we don't see in our industry, because the longer you're there, the more paychecks you get. And that's just, that's why Adam and I kind of rolled out to create our own practice, was because it's something that, we're super passionate about when it comes to the
yeah.
clients we work with.
When I think that on that, the speed to value is, as it comes together, is diminished in that now the cost is higher, right?
Absolutely.
Now you have to carry that cost forever. And now the value is diminished because you're carrying the cost because your consultant didn't approach this properly for your benefit. They did it for
Mhm.
theirs.
Yeah.
It kind of also ties into Joe's question, which is how should consultants act as strategic architects or execution enablers in a phase AI rollout? I think it's a little bit of both, right? It
Yeah.
depends
Yeah.
on what it is you're looking for. The strategic component of this, like how do you create a strategy that fits for your organization so that we can figure out what pieces are in place and what pieces are needed and where AI can help the most is a key component of it, right? The
Mhm.
execution part of this is hard as well. And this
Mhm.
is where you get somebody who's nimble in the industry and understands what's
Mhm.
happening to your
Exactly.
business as it changes so they can interpret what's happening. I know it looks like that's going really well and we're getting a lot of good data, but it's not
Mhm.
telling you what it needs to.
Yeah.
It's funny, I was actually sitting with a gentleman yesterday who was like, so when do I get value from this? Because we're talking to them about a proof of concept and a
Mhm.
simulation and how the simulation is going to collect data and this, that, and the other. And he goes, okay, so what am I supposed to do with that? I was like, well, the data is important for the AI to learn, but it also will tell you where it got things right and where it got things wrong. It's like, right, but when does it add value?
Mhm.
That's a part of the execution program. Part of that's your risk tolerance, right? When do you flip the switch and say that this is on, and when do you know the how do you know the difference in that point in time,
Mhm.
right? As an architect and as an enabler, it's our job to be able to tell them we have enough data for this to work or we don't.
Mhm.
And it needs to spend a little bit more time learning. Otherwise, it's going to do some weird stuff and draw some strange conclusions on your behalf. Um, Always have a human interface to your AI, of course, but when it's trying to make decisions and it's trying to stop production for you, for example,
Mhm.
that's it could have a lot of false stops
Mhm.
before it realizes what's important and what's not important to stop for. So architecting strategically as well as executing
Mhm.
is you got to be able to do both
Yeah.
and see the difference. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it comes as they are that coach to your enterprise architect, right? They are that coach to, the actual architects of your organization so that you can consume that knowledge and have that knowledge transfer so that they understand what that looks like. The job of the
Yeah.
consultant is to say like this is how it works in the industry. Now let's make it work for your internal team and then that passover. When it comes to
Yeah.
execution enablers, which I love that word, good buzzword for me, which love buzzwords. We talk about what does that look like as far as execution. That looks like the consultant being dedicated to your goals as the business, not to spend all your money, not to the vendor's goals, not to custom integrations that you have to sign in blood for. You have to make sure that they understand your business goals and you have a partner in achieving those because
Yeah.
the SI and the vendors, they're going to drop the, technology on you, integrate it so it technically works. And it could look like, again, to Adam's point, like it's running fine, but is it actually giving you what you need as far as observational data to make good strategic business decisions?
And are the
Um,
Raptors running wild? It's a velociraptor somewhere lurking in your business. No,
I
I just
know.
I love that thought process of like, you mean the Raptors are out? Like
Sounds like you
so
need to
many
like
years
get that
ago, and how
energy out. You need to like write a blog on that or
right?
something. Jurassic
But
Park, it's always Jurassic Park or Star Wars for us nerds in IT. Like that's the things that we just
or
have to
Terminator
have
as
that
we
pop
get into
culture,
AI. That
that pop culture reference
uh,
too. But
but I think at the end of the day, one of the things that I think is I'd like to elaborate on though is um, the role of servant leadership in consulting,
yeah.
and in the way that that's something that you want to be pervasive in a consulting culture, right? Servant leadership. Consultants don't own the wins that they create at
Hmm.
all. They have to be in a position where seeing the client be successful is the point. It's almost like a better analogy for that is like a fishing guide, right? They take you on a boat. They do all the rowing and all this, that, and the other. You tangle your fly lines and this, that, and the other, and he's always untangling them, this, that, and the other. But you're reeling in fish, and that's his job. His job is to get you to catch fish. I'm sure that he would love to spend the day fishing instead of paddling a boat around for you. Maybe, maybe not. I would love to. I would rather fish, but it's my personal thing. But his job is to put you on fish and to enjoy that. and his success is dependent on how many you catch. And then you leave for the day with a wonderful experience, and he's left with a workout, right? Um, Consulting's the same way. We don't own the fish we catch. We don't own that experience, but we certainly draw joy from it and fulfillment in being able to bring those experiences to our clients so that they can achieve that value. And that's not our win. That's theirs. We very often don't get to see the value that comes
Yeah.
after go live because we've worked ourselves out of a job, and that's the point. And I think that that's something that I've seen be done really, really well in a business. And I've seen that change in a business where the wins become ours and our wins become more important than the client's wins. And when that happens, you really have a challenge in changing the meaning of consultant, in my perspective. And I've had a real resistant reaction to that in the
Hmm.
past, and will continue to. And I'd encourage anybody who is thinking that consulting is about them. It's not. It's about
Hmm.
providing wins for your clients. And if you find that your wins are overshadowing the benefits of your client, you might consider an adjustment in your priorities because if you're not adding value, then you're not doing your job as a consultant. That's my perspective. But anyway,
Yeah.
serious moment after the Velociraptors
I
escaped.
know, right?
Yeah.
After the Velociraptor. But I think, in just kind of building on your metaphor here to kind of bring it back to kind of speed to value. When we look at something like Jurassic Park and the overall thesis or theme of that piece of fiction, that content movie series is balancing innovation and control, right? So we have the innovation of a park with dinosaurs that are extinct creatures, but then we have the control of very dangerous predators, right? So for us, then we, take it down a little bit of a notch here. In looking at speed to value, there is a balance with the quality of the value and the speed of the implementation, the innovation of the tools, while making sure we're not over innovating what the organization is ready for. And that's why it's so critical to understand. We see a lot of people sit in a boardroom with us and say, our strategy, our strategic goal of 2025 is AI. And we're like, awesome, that's super cool. What does that mean? And they're like, well, we plan to use Gen AI in some of our emailing. We plan to use automation in some of our manufacturing, and all of these kind of conceptual, intangible pieces. And then we don't often see, what do you want out of the technology? Do you want to just
Yeah.
be known for using AI, or do you need some sort of efficient business outcome from that?
Yeah.
And that is so critical to define.
Yep. What is and as you're thinking through that, I like Mick's question too. Like, how do you know? Right? How do you know that your consultant has your best interest in mind? And I think that one of the real dead ringers is they are pushing a pace that just doesn't
Mhm.
feel right for you. In some cases, it may be they're pushing a pace that's too fast and they're not listening to you. And then they're telling you, well, if you want to go slower, all you're doing is doubling the budget. It's like, actually, if I want to go slower, what I'm doing is I'm cutting your role back a little bit because I don't need you at full speed for 16 months. I need you at half speed for 20 or something like
Mhm.
that, right? Fine. It's that run rate isn't static and it shouldn't be. When you feel like they're telling you the timeline is extending and we need to keep our efforts the same and you don't understand why, that's probably them doing a bad job of explaining to you what the difference is between what they think they want to do and what is might be best for you. So ask good
Mhm.
questions and trust your gut on that, right?
Mhm.
Um, you know, uh, if you have a good positive relationship with your consultants and you trust them, you'll feel like they are a fit within your culture and they
Mhm.
fit within your organization and they're part of the team as
Mhm.
opposed to somebody who's an outside vendor. And that's the difference. It's a real soft subjective vibe, but I've had so many folks come to me, even to this day, our project has changed without you in it
Mhm.
and it doesn't feel right anymore. And then I said, okay, well, tell me more about your projects. And he's like, well, we added a year to our timeline. Our consulting team has gotten bigger, and I'm still not confident that that year that we added to our timeline is enough. You did? Why did you add it? Well, they just said it's taking longer, and it's like, did they underscope it, or are they blowing it up?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So why? Like, trust your gut on these things and
Yeah.
understand what it is, and just give yourself a chance at trying to figure out whether or not you think they have your best interest in mind.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you shouldn't work with somebody that is self-interested and very good at
Yeah.
what they do,
Exactly.
right? There's a people who are good at what they do will often be self-interested.
Mhm.
You just need to know the difference in how it is you're going to use them, right? If you have somebody that's going to take advantage of you, you need to know that. But if they're
Mhm.
very good at what they do, you need to know that within a controlled mechanism, right? I need these guys, and they're doing very good work for me, but I
Mhm.
also need to lean hard on them so that they work hard as opposed to just ripping my budget wide open. It's not going to cost them their job; it's going to cost you yours
Mhm.
when your CEO or your board says, "Why are we 200% over budget on this and
Yeah.
only half done?" You
Yeah.
know, those consultants don't care about that. They just care about taking home a paycheck so that they can be there as long as possible.
Mhm.
And having a trusting relationship with them where you feel like that makes that respect is garnered both ways is important. I think
Mhm.
it's a soft natured thing, but I really think that it's important to be able to trust your guts and your instincts on who it is you work well with and trust.
I totally agree. There's a if it feels weird, it is. That might not be it's wrong. That might just be that there's something going on kind of under the surface. A lot of times that's bubbled up resistance from the team, right? You hired someone, you're ready to go, you're like speed to value, let's do this, let's go. But you're not essentially your organization isn't ready for that. And that
Mhm.
like tension and stress is building up and you can kind of sense that your
Yeah.
consultant should be able to speak to, okay, now we got to kind of take a step back and look at we can't move forward as an executive team without the organization supporting and engaging this speed to value
Yeah. Speed to
implementation.
value at a high cost is not speed to
No,
value, right?
it's
You
speed
want
to no
the
good.
idea exactly. It's just speed, and if you're throwing away every dollar that you make from it, then the
Mhm,
decision was wrong in the first place because now you're at break even, and that's not a good spot to be in. That's not what you're looking for. Nobody wants to
mhm.
break even. They want to make money. They want to add
Yeah,
value, and they want to increase that value at an increasing rate. And so if all the value that you're creating you're giving away, that's not speed to value. That's running in place
yeah,
with a lot of
exactly.
effort to get nothing out of it.
Yeah, and you know what, you guys, this stuff is hard, right? So if you don't know what you don't know, definitely reach out to not only us, but just the industry network in general and make sure that you're asking a bunch of diverse questions. Knowledge is power in that everyone has an agenda, whether it's, an agenda in benefit to you is really the question, right? That doesn't mean that these are horrible people. It just means everyone has a different job to do in this type of scenario. And many people don't know how to achieve this. So I encourage you, as we kind of close up this conversation, to DM us if you have any questions. We're always happy to just kind of have a chat about where things are going. We do that all the time. No pressure whatsoever. And then you can also follow the Confluential. You can go to theconfluential.com. You can follow us on LinkedIn. You can replay these on YouTube, so you can kind of get any information that you need or join the conversation in the comments. We try, right, with client travel to go live every Thursday, to kind of give you more on the transparency of this conversation around speed to value and what you can achieve with these incremental implementations. And we're also just here as a resource in the industry. So with that, Adam, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And we will
My pleasure.
see our audience. Thank you for the great questions. We will see everybody next week. Thanks so much.